Welcome into ATL Day Ones with Jarvis and Tenitra. Coming up on today's show, I know the Hawks took a nail last night, but this seemed a little different.
And the Falcons were able to shore up one guy in the trenches, but will today give us some insight and if they go after another one.
And last but not least, and for the culture, Byron and Tyler are doing what? That's all coming up next right here on ATL Day Ones. Let's go.
This is ATL Day Ones, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
I want to start by saying thank you for making ATL Day Ones your first listen of the day. And remember, we are free and available wherever you download your podcast and wherever you download your podcast. Make sure that you leave us a 5-star review. Really appreciate that from you in advance. And today's episode of ATL Day Ones is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. But T, when you think about last night, the Hawks take the L to the Miami Heat. 130 to 128. Dejounte Murray makes the score a little bit closer than what it actually was. At the end of the game, it actually covered a point spread if you're into that type of thing last night in Miami. But I think one of the things that we've all gotten used to, T, is the fact that the Atlanta Hawks will lose a lead, and as soon as they if it's not attached to them, they're gonna lose it. And we know you can't attach leads to human beings in an NBA game, so that's what's going to happen when the Hawks, when you talk about going up and getting off to a good start. But the Heat end up coming back and then doing what they do. But I think for me, this game seems just a little tad different because when in those comebacks with the Hawks in the past, you kind of see them kind of just tinkle it away, and then they're never kind of like they're out of it for the rest of the game, and then they kind of limp to the finish line and then end up losing by just as much as they were winning by. But I think last night, though, you saw the fight. You saw a little scrappiness. You saw what we've been pointing out as far as what we like to see is Saddiq Bey. Those guys just coming out there and coming through for the team when you need them. And you saw Trae Young towards the end as well, coming up with some big plays with the active hands and hitting that long three-pointer. So I just think for me, T, I think true enough, it sucks that the fact that they gave up another lead, but I think they're starting to look a little different. And I think these baby steps are really key in Quin Snyder's foray towards the end of the season.
They are, but I'll ask the key to what? And that question, I think, is looming large because I agree with you. Once again, Bench Mob came up big. I'm going to give them their title back because they are earning the title again, right?
Indeed. Especially
the newest addition, Saddiq Bey, as you mentioned, as far as Bogdan Bogdanovic was still solid last night. Got a little bit from Double O. Jalen Johnson, not so much, but hey, he was in there banging when he could. We appreciate that. Just need him to stop getting in foul trouble when he has the opportunity to be out there. But I think you do mention something that's important, which is, the Hawks had that runaway first quarter, 43 points in the first quarter, were up by 15. And then kind of slowly but surely, you saw the Heat do what they do. They chipped away, especially the third quarter. That's where that's their bread and butter. And they were able to hold the Hawks. Actually, they kind of started that in the second quarter with the 25 points and then kind of continued it in the third.
Right.
That said, there was one area where I was paying attention because Coach Quin Snyder had called it out, right? He wanted to see his backcourt get a little more active defensively, especially on the boards. They didn't quite get there last night, so they've got to kind of step that up. But at least, to your point, Dejounte Murray and Trae Young were consistent from the field, and they weren't just heaving up threes, or it wasn't just at the end of the game, the Hawks were out of gas. No, until 25 seconds left. And Caleb Martin decided to commit a crime in picking off Trae Young. That game was still very much in hand. But I still say, I agree with you, still feels different even in these 3 losses in these last 4 games. But what does it really mean?
Yeah. And I think what it means is the fact that, hey, here's who they have coming up next. They're going to have to cleanse themselves of this loss. This season series loss to the Miami Heat, and we know that 7th seed is probably going to be ugly unless the Miami Heat just go on they just lose themselves or somebody gets hurt, or one of their main players get hurt. I think that, Miami don't have to worry about the Hawks creeping up on them. But I think the most important thing is these next 3 games. You got 2 against the Washington Wizards, and, you got Boston at the crib. I ain't going to even talk about, that game. I'm going to leave that one alone. But this Washington
Although they're
Wizards,
swooning, so
they
lost 3
games,
straight. So
I get that part of it, but I think you got to take care of these cats that's coming up on your behind, and that's the Washington Wizards. And when you think about these 2 games, you have to go on the road, and they haven't been playing well on the road lately. So this is a game that they're going to have to say, you know what? Here's the answer to that question that you just asked. We got to win. like they need dubs, and they need dubs fast and furious. And when you think about what those rotations may look like with Quin Snyder is coming up, you're starting to see some of those things play out. Now, John got into a little foul trouble, but I think more than likely those minutes probably would look the same if he wasn't in foul trouble. When you think about it, and that's the thing with JC as far as the rebounding standpoint, right? Like you can't be in a game like that and what you end up with 2 rebounds for the entire game. It just can't do that.
And you're being
that's unacceptable.
Nice.
That's unacceptable.
He had 1.
Yeah,
you're being nice.
See, I was being given. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to work on my JC hate, I guess, if people want to call it.
They want to call it. Right, which people, please, Jarvis has no hateration in his heart for John Collins, but he's going to call a spade that spade. And that's just the truth of the matter, because to your point, Jarvis, when you start looking down that schedule, and again, you look at the immediate, which, like you mentioned, you essentially have 2 back-to-backs in D.C., and we saw what the Wizards were able to do on the Hawks home court just last week. So now you're going to go to the district, and you're in desperate need of taking at least one, if not both of those games. And like you said, then they've got the Celtics, then they've got the Wolves, and they're both, the Wolves at least are playing solid. The Celtics are having a little bit of a swoon, but you made a great point. You can't count on that. And you also can't count on the Warriors not doing their job because Steph Curry is back, right? So you just look down the schedule and you're like, okay, there's the Spurs. Okay, you can check that box, maybe. You see the Pistons. You hope you can check that box. And then it becomes Wolves, Pacers, Grizzlies. They could or could not be without Ja Morant, but they are about a 500 team without him, so it doesn't mean you're going to automatically get that win. You got the Cavs. Yet again, the Nets are surprising folks. Mavs, Bulls. I mean, there's really 1 or 2 easy games in there, and then you go back. The Wizards come back here, and then you got the Sixers and Celtics. I mean, the question really just becomes, Jarvis, and again, with 17 games left, it just makes me wonder, okay, do we just need to completely and totally dead the conversation about the playoffs? I think we should, because I don't see where you're going to get enough wins in those 17 games to talk playoffs. I think you better just relegate yourself to either play in or be perfectly okay with this being an audition situation where individuals are making the case to come back to this team next season. And I'll be honest with you, with 17 games left, I'm okay with either one of those scenarios, because I do believe, and I'm going to hinge my hat and hang my hat on, Quin Snyder is going to do more than just be coaching on the sidelines. Come this offseason, he's going to have a seat at that table about what this team is going to look like next season to be a contender.
Absolutely. When David Locke, who's the play-by-play guy for the radio broadcast, he joined John Chuckery, and that was the one thing that he has a very close relationship with Quin, and said, hey, this dude 100% wants to be able to, have some say-so in who he's coaching out there. And I think that way this roster is constructed, the way we see these last few games play out, I'm all for that. Sign me up.
Same.
Because I need a different set of eyes on what this roster actually is. And I think that, you get tired of seeing the same old. And I'm with you. I'm right along with you, T. If they don't make the playoffs, or they somehow just lose it towards the end, I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm so fine with that, because at the end of the day, I don't want to get my hopes up for a play-in game and then they get on a little run toward a few games before the season is out, and they get all my hopes up, get me lathered up, and then next thing you know, they come out and they poop the bed. I don't want to see that, or get swept out of the first round of playoffs against the Milwaukee Bucks or the Boston Celtics, or what have you. So
or get one game and in your heart of hearts, that's the only game they're going to get out of this.
That's the gimme. That's the gimme. So it's. I'm with you. I'm with you. I appreciate you. Let me lay on the couch because I'm perfectly fine with these guys just playing themselves out. Like, just let it play out. Play it out.
Yes.
Go hard. But if it
Yes.
ends up to a point where you're out of the play-in and out of the playoffs scenario, that is perfectly fine. And hey, let's figure it out for next year because that's where I'm at right now with it. So, speaking of the Falcons are figuring out where they are, and they just re-signed Lorenzo Carter. They got to figure out what they're gonna do with Kaleb McGary. Ooh, we're gonna talk about all that next. But first, we gotta talk about FanDuel.com/lockedon. If you haven't gone to that website, what's that website, Jarvis? FanDuel.com/lockedon. Were you listening? Yes, this is the #1 sports book in America. Because guess what? They have some really cool things for the new customers. What they have for you is they have a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. If you took that L last night, went on that 2.5, or you actually betted the 2.5 that the Hawks were going to cover, you made some money. You know where you get all this information from? That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. So it's down. You can download the app. And it's safe, secure, and it's super easy to use. They don't share all your information all over the place. No, they don't do that. They got everything right there just for you. And you can bet on everything from the money line, the point scores, and threes drained. Y'all know who you can bet on with the threes drained. Saddiq Bey. Go ahead and bet on Saddiq Bey. That's the guy who's shooting about a 60% clip from three. So yeah, make sure you go check that out and go win you some money because that's what it's all about. Plus, they even let you combine your best for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So here's what you do. Don't miss your chance to get the no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. To learn more, make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Indeed, indeed. So if you were somebody who was betting that the NFL would reinstate Calvin Ridley, well, you got your bet right because Calvin Ridley was indeed reinstated. So that means the Falcons get the Jaguars' 5th round pick this year. It's always good, as many picks as you can get in those late rounds when you're dealing with someone like Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith making the decisions, and you have a success story like Tyler Algier. It's still a good look. They can also get a conditional 2024 pick. That would be a 4th rounder. And then, of course, depending on how things play out with Calvin Ridley this 2023 season with the Jaguars, it could end up being a 2024 3rd rounder. If he signs an extension, it'll be a 2nd rounder. Advantage Falcons all day, every day with that. I think it's going to work out and be a win-win for both sides. The Jags, Trevor Lawrence will have another weapon in Calvin Ridley, and with all of the assets that the Falcons were able to pile up, right? So Calvin Ridley is back. And here's the question I would have for those of us who kind of look at things like Jarvis, like you and I do. We don't really just look at it from a sports perspective and a numbers perspective, because when we meet a player or we cover a player, we may learn more about how that person operates. And I can remember him being the guy who was so humbled when he was selected as captain. I remember asking him how he felt about being a captain. You asked him about that as well. And he was very humble, very appreciative about the opportunity and took it very, very seriously. So that's the guy. And that guy whose face lit up when you talked about him catching balls out of jugs for hours, that's the guy that I'm going to root for.
Yeah.
The guy who made the very, very poor decision that got him booted out of the league for a year. Hopefully that guy's gone. Hopefully, as I believe this is his statement, or rather the statement from the Jaguars, they're saying, hey, today's reinstatement by the NFL brings an end to a challenging chapter of his professional career. That's the statement from Calvin, rather, that the Jaguars released. He says, I've always owned my mistakes, and this is no different. I look forward to showing my new coaches and team exactly who I am. So you know what, Jarvis? I'm going to take him at his word, and I'm going to definitely be looking out and rooting for Calvin Ridley.
Me too. Cause when you think about like you said, being covering Cal like this, and being so close when he got drafted in, and I remember that day vividly when right before they got ready to go to London, and I asked him a question as far as what something that Arthur Smith had said, and I just saw the look on his face, and it was just like something wasn't right. Like how you look at somebody and you're like, see, ain't there today. It just wasn't right. And then maybe a day later, less than 24 hours later, they were announcing that he wasn't going to traveling with the team that the next couple of days. And I was just like, man, what is going on? So, and of course, as we, talking to different folks within the organization and our folks outside of the organization and close to the situation, it was like, hey, this is what's going down. And when you find those things out, it's just like, man, it's just one thing after another. And then you hear about the gambling piece, and it was just like it was like a snowball effect. And I think that with all of that being said, I really, really am really rooting for this guy. Not necessarily for the whole assets piece. That's a whole nother thing. But I think just from as a man, as a person, as a father, I think that I'm rooting for Cal to get back on that ride that we call life, and say, hey, man, I'm gonna continue and do my thing, and I'm gonna get paid and get another contract so I can be able to make a living, to be able to take care of my family. So that's kind of where I am with Cal. I really hope that everything works out for him down there, and he's back at the crib here in Florida. So hey, what can go wrong? I think this is the perfect place for Cal, and I think that Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith worked out a really solid deal in order to be able to get some compensation for a very talented player.
And I think that's a great point too, because Arthur Smith in particular, I can remember him being very respectfully protective of Calvin Ridley in that situation. That could have gone sideways with a whole lot of coaches and a whole lot of organizations. So give Arthur Smith, Terry Fontenot, Arthur Blank and company a whole lot of credit for trying their best to protect this guy, knowing what was really going on, both mentally and then with the mistake that he made in that gambling space, and putting him in a space where they could have sent him out to NFL Siberia if they felt like, hey, man, we'll send you to the Texans. But they sent him to a quality squad that's in contention and will be in contention for a number of years to come. I thought that was a solid look as well. And that, to me, Falcons fans, you should be rooting for Calvin Ridley, because there's something in him that Arthur Smith said, hey, while you probably won't fit here anymore, that day has probably come and gone. There's still quality left in you as a person and as a player. So we're going to set you up for success. So I think that's a great thing as well. And I think that the Falcons will handle Kaleb McGary that same way. I think that they made a very valid point last year when they said, no, we're not picking up your fifth-year option. We haven't seen any reason to do so. We'll make you step up to the plate, and then we're going to sit down at the table and decide. So whether that is going to be an exclusive tag that we might hear about today, a non-exclusive tag, or whatever the case may be, by 4:00, we're going to know something one way or the other. We already know about Lorenzo Carter. We know that he's coming back for a couple of years, and we'll talk about that in a second. But for Kaleb McGary, this one will be intriguing, because not only is it a question of whether they'll put a tag on Kaleb McGary, but Jarvis, if so, or if you think so, what kind of tag might that be?
Wow. For me, I really feel like the Falcons want to re-sign him in some capacity.
Yes,
agreed. Reason why I put that caveat on it is because I don't think they want to pay him $18 million a year or $17. You know what I mean? So because at the end of the day, that's why these negotiations get a little weird from time to time, because we only got 1 year of solid play or excellent play from a run blocking standpoint, right? You know, we also, people want to tend to forget about, the passing game and the type of scheme that Arthur Smith runs. Like, he didn't put his offensive linemen in bad situations this year because he was able to run the football. Now we go backtrack when Matt Ryan was here, when they were throwing the ball a lot more than what they were doing when Marcus Mariota was on the center. Kaleb McGary got exposed. And that has been his knock ever since he came into the league.
Yes.
Before he even stepped foot in the league and got drafted, people said he has issues with edge rushers or speed rushers. He has issues with the speed rushers. And when that continues to remain the same every year, I get concerned. That's a red flag for me. And then when you get yourself to a space where, hey, you elevate your run blocking, to a whole nother level, and being one of the better run blocking right tackles in the league, but you still struggle with those speed rushes. That's something that I can't leave that I can't leave that behind in negotiations when it comes to whether or not you want to be a top 10 guy or a top 10, 15, or top 15 paid guy. Yeah.
Right. And before you go on, I want to put a pause in it, because I have a question for you. In your opinion, Jarvis, that's a great point. we're now moving into year 5. And like you said, that means we're now in year 6 or 7 for that same knock. That same knock is like, I don't want to hear it again. So, Jarvis, is this something, in your opinion, with you being a guy who, obviously on the defensive side, but you were in the trenches, where you see that there can ever be enough of a sizable bump in that space to the point where the Falcons should really consider him to be a prime O lineman? Or is that something where they're just like, okay, that's just going to be a liability of his, and we'll just continue to build around him in that space because he's good enough against the run?
That's a really good question, because here's the thing. Like, you have to weigh it out. When okay, like, I'm paying for a really good run blocking right tackle, but I'm going, when it's time to throw the football in today's game, that's going to be often, more than likely. If you don't get your defensive situation figured out, you're going to be in that situation a lot more this year as well, with a second-year guy who's only started 4 games as of right now, as of today.
True.
So, being the way this roster is currently constructed right now, as of today, I can't take that risk and go out there and make him a top 10 paid right tackle. I can't do that.
Yeah.
And if it's a matter of, hey, I let him test the free agent market, see what's out there, see what type of offers he's getting, and if he comes back and gets that reality check, like, hey man, well, this team is only offering me this. Well, we'll offer you a little bit more. Hey, let's offer you $12 million a year. I'll be cool with that. I'm calm with that. That's a nice, respectable contract.
Right.
And that's a contract which is a lot more than what you were going to get when they decide not to pick up your 5th-year option.
Yes.
So, I mean, I hate to be harsh like that, but that's at the end of the day, when it comes to negotiations and long-term investment, like, we have to put the facts out on the table to you.
Yep. No, I appreciate that. That's why I was asking you for your insight on that, because it appears to me like that would put the Falcons in sort of the driver's seat or the catbird seat, because, no offense, but that's kind of like 50%, 30%, 40% of your job. I'll say maybe even 30, 40%, because we do know that the Falcons are run dominant.
Right.
But still, that means about 40% of your job, you're average at best. So, yeah, I do still think that's also one of those situations where the Falcons are indeed in the driver's seat in that situation. And I do think there are still some viable O-linemen, whether you wanted to go to the draft or whether you want to go to free agency, who could be, dare we say it from a football perspective, a two-way O-lineman, right? Now, going back to the defensive side of the ball, which Jarvis and I love to go to on this show. So did you really think we were going to not talk defense and talk Low Carter? Reason being, too, Jarvis, remember a couple of weeks ago we had this conversation about some of those prove-it-year players and who were the ones that we wanted to kind of we prioritized. And we kind of were hoping that Rashaan Evans would be that one that they come out of the gates and say, woohoo, we'd like to keep you. But Low Carter's the one. He actually has that 2-year contract now. So are the Falcons pretty set when you look across that linebacker core, or do you think they need to obviously continue focusing on maybe re-signing Rashaan and maybe getting a little more help at linebacker?
Ooh, wow. I mean, for me, though, I know his position is an outside linebacker, but I look at Low Carter as a guy, let's just use him as an edge rusher. And I think that from an edge rushing standpoint, like, I feel like he's a guy that can be a solid rotational guy for you. Now, we haven't got the details just yet on what his contract is going to be. I know it's just 2 years, but just from a numerical standpoint, I think that I'm interested to see what that is, because, if you're talking about a guy who wasn't necessarily a guy who would remain healthy, he was able to play 17 games for you, got 4 sacks, which is not great, but it is viable.
It's serviceable.
It's serviceable,
because
right?
Didn't that get you almost all the way to what they had the year before as an entire team?
Right. So yeah, those are some of the things that I feel like some of the reasons why I felt like it was good for the Falcons to bring Low Carter back, and I think they want to continue to upgrade at that edge rusher spot. Because we know D'Angelo Malone probably might be standing up on 1st and 2nd down, and 3rd down he's going to come in and put his hand in dirt or get in the 2-point stance and rush the pass on 3rd and long. So I think there's going to be a lot of versatility, a lot of moving parts as far as what their rotation looks like, and I will hope that Lowe is not necessarily that starter guy, but a guy that can come in on 3rd down and rush and don't have to worry about anything else. And I think that he was pretty okay at that last year. So I think shout out to the Falcons for bringing it back. filling out their roster, because that's what they need to do. A lot of people don't understand. Like, they got a lot of spots to fill on their roster, and they started off with low card. And to be honest with you, I congratulate them for doing it.
Yeah, I can appreciate that as well, making moves, and also just, to me, giving the fan base confidence that they are moving forward and that every day is a day of action for the Falcons. So we'll keep you posted. I know you guys saw me kind of look down at my phone. You saw Jarvis kind of looking down, because we want to make sure that if there's any breaking news that you guys know about it, especially as we approach that deadline. But let's just be honest, Jarvis, the whole of NFL Kingdom, it's really Lamar Jackson Day. It's really happy Lamar Jackson Day, because that's what the world is looking at. And that's what Locked On Sports is checking out as well. So if you want to know about the major stories, Aaron Rodgers is another one that everyone's looking at. Check out Locked On Sports today, because they've got that national news about all of these moving parts on this franchise tag deadline day. So don't forget, wherever you download your podcast, you definitely want to download Locked On Sports today there, of course, after you download ATL Day Ones. And don't forget to check them out on YouTube, just like you check us out. And I know you love For the Culture. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but don't forget, they have their version, and it's called Take of the Day. So Locked On Sports today, ATL Day Ones, sounds like a winner to me.
Absolutely. You know what? Know what else sounds like a winner? If you guys go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on our way to 6,000 subscribers. So if you're listening or watching this podcast, make sure you go ahead and do that. Go ahead and join the family. Go ahead and sit with the cool kids. It's all right. It's okay. And if you want to reach out to the program, atlday1s@gmail.com. atlday1s@gmail.com is the way to get in contact with the show. But T, this is For the Culture. It is the intersection between sports, entertainment, the culture, and sometimes whatever the hell we want to talk about, because that's just how we get down on this show. Today is no different. How about that? The Tyler Perry, Byron Allen, those some heavy hitters, T. Yeah. They are looking at purchasing a majority stake in BET.
Whoa.
What do you think that would mean for the culture?
I know, right? But that would be, man, that's, we talk boss moves.
Pun intended, by the way.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. You know, when I think of BET, and no offense to a Bob Johnson or a Deborah Lee for what they were able to do. Bob Johnson, of course, building it from the ground up. Deborah Lee kind of taking it to the next level. Mm-hmm. But for me, Jarvis, honestly, the only time I watch BET is when there's some award show. Like, I couldn't tell you a lick of programming that BET does, but I can tell you what TV1 does. The reason I say that is because TV1 has continued, and really that entire space that Kathy Hughes has created, both radio and TV, has continued to evolve. I haven't seen that evolution of BET in a very, very long time. And it could be because of who owns it. I believe Viacom still owns it. And sometimes when
Paramount,
it's not something, Paramount, excuse me. Yes, that's right. Paramount Plus and BET Plus. And sometimes when it's not really at your heart, it does not, the content resonates as such. I'll give you a case in point. Essence. Founded by Black people, for Black people. An African-American male was at the helm of that. That was his vision. And for as long as it was in his hands and the hands of African-American women like Susan Taylor, it spoke to us. Once it was purchased by a larger entity, it just became a commercial piece of nothing. And we all tapped out on it.
Yep.
Once it got back into the right hands, now everyone's tapped back in because it represents and resonates with us. I think BET is going to need someone like Tyler Perry who can tell the story. I don't know much about Byron Allen. You know, some people have mixed reviews on kind of some of his content as it relates to
a professional football team. You know, his name has been dropped in there from time to time, so he got a little change.
Yeah. Right. But we know that he has the quantity of resources, but does he have the quality of commitment the way, say, maybe most people feel about Tyler Perry? Indeed. And the fact that he's got the money to back it up, but he also has the commitment to telling the Black story that he's had now for decades. So I'm really excited if his name is on it, because I feel like he'll continue to tell that story. And we can say with the projects that he's developed of recent, they're evolving. They're getting better and better. And maybe they can make BET a relevant player again for telling our story the way that I feel like TV1 has become.
Yeah, no doubt. And here's what I'm really excited about all of this, right, is the fact that there's going to be a 2023 version of BET, because we know it needs to be updated, right?
Yes.
We know it doesn't need to look like it did back in the mid 90s, because times are different. Things are different now. So Are they going to put some quality sports programming on there?
Yes.
Have some of us, up here calling the games. You know what I mean? So those are some of the things that I'm truly, truly excited about. We know Tyler Perry, he always putting everybody on when he does his movie projects and everything like that. So,
and he loves
I'm
him some Atlanta. So that's just
absolutely.
Now, when you want to talk about, like you said earlier, for the culture, now he is for the culture because we all know what he's done on that Fort Mac property, and he just continues to buy up barren land to expand his studio. So they could potentially bring a lot of BT, because back in the day, I'll tell you this, and then I know we got to wrap up, but back in the day when Monique had a show, they used to do that show, her BET night show. They used to do that show out of the basement studios of Turner Studios / Turner Sports. Wow. Yeah, because there just really weren't properties here, so they would just lease out a property. It would be amazing if they would be able to bring BET here in its fullness, right? Because number one, this is Chocolate City. Number two, DC, we still give you your props for being the original, but this is Chocolate City number 2.
It's ours now. Sorry, DC.
Yeah, I'm not gonna fight with those folks. I'm just gonna leave that alone. We're in the conversation. We're Atlanta's in the conversation. But boy, oh boy, man, would that be a boost? I am sure that Mayor Andre Dickens is probably salivating right now, like, oh man, if they get this. And Byron Allen, of course, with the Weather Channel and other properties, also has a vested interest in Atlanta. So what I'm hearing is cha-ching. And what I'm hearing is a potential win for Atlanta. So we'll keep you guys posted on whether or not this will continue to expand itself as Black Hollywood South.
Absolutely. A win for Atlanta is a win for all of us. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, first of all, people, we want to just say thank you for making ATL Day Ones your first listen of the day. Why don't you stop by Locked On Sports today and make that your second listen of the day? They have all the national news, NFL draft, the new league year is about to get ready to start. So it's going to be quarterbacks moving around, all that stuff. Aaron Rodgers trying to figure out if he want to, go back into the dark or come to the light. We don't know. They got it all right there for you at the news of the take of the day. So make sure you check them out wherever you find this podcast. And last but not least, before we get out of here, people, I only ask you guys one thing. Well, actually multiple things, but this is the most important thing. I ask you guys to make sure, if you don't do anything else, that you share love, show love, and most importantly, spread love.